What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here from Taco Moto Co. This is a 2024 KTM 500 6 days Exc-F. This is the plated dual sport bike, all new chassis, new platform. And if you've been checking out our other videos, we just did one on the Husky version of the off-road version of this bike. And so the Husky model would be the FES. So those two, the 500 EXC and then the FES, are the 50 states plated bikes, whereas the other versions, the other two versions that we talked about in that previous video, are the off-road, non-plated, non-street legal bikes, and they have their advantages and disadvantages. So if you go with this bike, let's hit some of the high points and what differentiates it from that off-road model. So you obviously are going to have street legal equipment. You'll have turn signals, and KTM continues to use an incandescent bulb here. This is an LED light. This lower piece is removed, so it's a two-piece rear end, just like it's been in generations past. This section here comes off. There's some screws that hold that, and then you have the under fender, which is attached to the upper fender. This lower fender here maintains a small plate mounting area. That's what this little area section is here. And then if you remove this US spec piece, you still have that. So our tidy tail will give you a different tail light, and it will include the turn signals and then the tail run light feature in one housing, and you could remove that outer section if you wanted to do that. One thing I forgot to mention in the last bike overview is the fact that the kickstand is all new. Foot pegs are new. The kickstand for this new generation bike attaches differently. You cannot cross adapt this new model to the old one. This is a much better version. It's a tremendous upgrade, and unfortunately you can't put that on the other one. The pegs are new, they mount in a new place. The frame is all new. These are 90% all new bikes. Significant improvements, really major. We talked about, this has the exact same vapor recovery system, and in the other video, which we'll link in the bottom, we spend a little bit more time talking about that, but you have some options. You can leave that, you can remove that, you can do a few things with that. We talk about that. Well, let's see, here on the bars, now you have mirrors, which you don't have on the other bike, and you'll have a perch here. We happen to throw on our little, this is our adapter perch, and it brings the mirror mounting point out of the interference of the throttle grip. And we forgot to put the mirror back on. There's a new switch, so it's just a new toggle for the street bikes. You still have the three positions, but it's just got a little bit of a different feel to it, different workup. Now notice on this left side, there's a map switch. This sadly does not work. It is not mapped. The ECU does not see this, and so there's no functionality to it. The US bikes are not going to get a map switch. You're not going to get quick shift. You're not going to get the traction control, the modes, the two maps. None of that's happening. So that was a promise. That was, I'd hoped for that would be the case, but not on the North American bikes. You have the new style headlight. So instead of having straps like you had in previous bikes, they got rid of the rubber straps, and you now have this bracket. We've got the headlight out because we're going to be swapping it out with a Ruby R7, moto-minded bracket Ruby R7, but you see that it's a two-piece. So you have the outer face, the mask itself, and then you have this inner carrier, and that's where your turn signals mount. So I am a little concerned about the durability of this over time. I don't have a lot of confidence that this is going to survive some crashing that may have some impact into the headlight mask area itself, but we'll see. So there might be riders who want to convert this back to the 17 through 23 headlight mask, and we've done that, and it fits, and it perfectly fits on there just fine, no problem. And then you go back to the strap, so you can retrofit backwards if you wanted to. And that's really what we'll probably do on all our bikes. All our new generation 24 bikes will probably go with the older masks. The harness is different on the plated bikes than the enduro bikes, the off-road bikes. They have configuration for a key. They have turn signals, the wiring for the turn signals. They have the outlets for the turn signals. And then you have a brake switch. So this is a Brembo, unlike the Husky, which uses the brake tech. This is Brembo, so Brembo on both sides. And there is, you can hear the Here, the micro switch. There's a micro switch here on the lever, and then you have the signal that comes in, plugs into the harness there. There's a little dummy that is not used on either of the two bikes, and this may be that this bracket is going to be used for another platform, and they'll have some function there, but it's blanked out. The orange and green wire cut on the bottom of the Speedo, just like on the previous bike, that enduro bike that we talked about, that's also cut. Very strange. You have the same, this is for the My KTM Wi-Fi dongle, which never really materialized. I don't think this is going to be a North American thing. And then this would be for a map switch, and that's a CAN bus end of line. And so neither one of these are used. They're blanked off on your bikes, and they'll just stay blanked off indefinitely. This is for that map switch, and we'll just pull this off because there's not going to be any functionality for that. You have the O2. We talked about O2 sensor. I don't know if we did or not, but the bikes are emission controlled for the O2, and that's a 12 millimeter narrowband heated O2. And for real fuel management, for fuel trim management, when we eventually, this very soon, it's taken a long time, and I know that a lot of riders are waiting for that, and so are we, but eventually we'll have a wideband closed loop system with the Get ECU, and that will come with an 18 millimeter wideband heated O2 sensor. That'll be race grade, automotive race grade, and that'll be a big upgrade. Let's see, on the Husky, you couldn't, so the yellow choke knob, there it is, the fast, not the choke, but it's really identified as a fast idle knob. That's this yellow right here. So on the Husky, there's an open plate on the KTM that you don't have on the Husky. Body panels cover this. So it's much easier to reach in and to be able to access that here, no problem whatsoever. And we looked at that on the Husky bike. This KTM has a PDS rear end, so there's no linkage. There's nothing coming down and hanging on the bottom. Brembo on the rear end for all the brakes, all the hydraulics are Brembo. And then the 6-days give you a solid rear rotor. The advantage of a solid over vented is mud packing. And a solid rotor, if you ride a lot of mud, then you won't get it inside of the grooves here, but the pads run over this surface here. And so you have longer pad life. That's really the only difference between a vented and a non-vented. And traditionally, the ISDs are held in European countries, not only European countries. This one is Argentina, so they do race all over the world, but they tend to be muddy, long duration races, and you can only change so many parts and certain parts on a bike over the duration of the race. And so to maximize rear brake pad life, solid rotor over vented. 6-days, all the little color scheme, the graphics, the lasering on the rims, all that stuff denotes a 6-days. Same muffler configuration as in the previous generation with the perf screen at the back. There is the restrictive bung that goes into the muffler itself. We've covered that many times. All of that remains in play. You know that the new generation WP suspension has the toolless clickers, which is great. Big upgrade, and in fact they now offer on the new generation bikes clickers on the bottom. So where you didn't have that previously in the last few years with the Explorer 48s, you do now with this new version. And so that gives you compression and rebound in each fork leg at the top and bottom. Very adjustable. And now these clicker settings do have impact. They do make a change. You can tell, you can feel it. And so there's a lot more rider adjustability out of these than you had before. On the 6-days, you have billet clamps. On the non 6-days, they'll be forged, but they give you, and we talked about this on the other bike, they give you the torque settings and values on some of the engine points and the suspension points. Let's take a look under the seat here. And you have the same configuration. This style, this setup was introduced in 2022 and a half with the factory edition bike, and it's now carried over to the enduro bikes. And so this ECU mounting point is new. And then you have a PDM. This is a power distribution module. I think KTM calls it an off-road control unit. And this replaces relays and fuses. You no longer have that. You have this solid state controller where you have lights, function lights that tell you if a circuit is on or off loop, offline, and you have ignition, lights, brake, horn, pump, fan. So where you used to have relays, you had the little relay block, no longer. You had fuses, no longer. And its place is this. Up here you have a little wire management brackets. Here is a spider in that little hole. What's up, dude? This is for the tail light function. So this light is controlled by this connector. This here is for the tail light on the top. And this one you have your brake, run, and ground. Brown is always ground on a KTM. So that's what this one is. This is for the reg rec, which lives here underneath the side panel. You can see it up into the airbox. And then this is for turn signals. And also you have a brown for ground, and then you have purple and black. Purple is your left, and then black is right. So that all lives in this little cavity right here, these little brackets. This is your ECU connection port here. That's the dealer diagnostic port. This is the connector for the, you now have the tip over sensor, which is located here on this point. All of this is now serviceable from the top, which is pretty convenient. This is your programming dongle. So for the key and then the headlight, if you wanted to do different configurations to remove the key so that you didn't have a key, you could unplug the key itself wherever it went. You could get different dongles. We have those where you could plug in a aftermarket dongle, which would eliminate the key. It would ignore the key, and so you could operate the bike without a key. You could also get one that would eliminate the headlight if for whatever reason you didn't want to have headlight power. You would get that dongle. Battery is now up here on the top. New fuel pump. We've talked about this multiple times. No need here to go into that. You can watch other videos where we cover that. Switch, this is the same. This is the carryover from previous generations. Only this is new for this year. Let's see, the steering lock has been reconfigured, and so instead of having it on the frame, it's now mounted to, it swings with the triple clamp. It's part of the triple clamp. And in previous generations bike, there was a little, like a bearing, little stamped steel cover that would cover the top of that for like pressure washing. And now you have this where this locks into a cam. There's a welded bracket, there's a little welded foot right there where if you wanted to do the steering lock, you'd hit that and it would punch a little pin in and would lock that. Now, and I think we say this all the time, don't believe that any of this is gonna be a theft deterrent to a really focused crackhead who wants your bike. He will figure out a way to do it, and he's either gonna pick up your bike straight away or he'll just snap that. You know, if you hit that hard enough, you'll break something there and free up the bars. So just be aware that none of these are last and final theft deterrent mechanisms. You really need to do more than just that. So that's a little overview, I think, of what some of the new on the new chassis. And this is the 500. So the 350 Exc-F will be the same platform. Everything's the same except for the engine itself. And then on the Husky side, everything is really the same except you're gonna have different seat plastics and fuel tank, but the electronics, the engine, the frames are different because you have Link versus PDS. The swing arm is different, but the powertrain is the same. The subframe for the Husky is a different part number than the subframe for a KTM. They are configured differently. Some of the mounting points are a little different, but what is the same is the new version of the down tube, the strengthening down tube on the new generation of the chassis. So it's a hybrid chassis. The Husky doesn't have a little pass-through like the KTMs do. It's just, there's some styling in there and a little bit tuning. They've tuned the subframes a little bit differently for different dynamics and chassis feel between the two bikes, but similar enough to where the advantages cross over and you get them on either one of the subframes. So that's probably it. That's all we'll probably cover here. If you have any questions about any of the new chassis bikes or any of the upgrades and updates that we'll be coming out with soon on them, hit us up, like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.